the federal government. They spend $1 billion over 5 years feeding 400 kids. Our program in Ontario delivers almost 90 million meals and snacks to more than 600,000 school-age children, and our annual funding is $38 million. Like, something's broken.
Canada's premiers met this week to discuss all things provincial, including how the federal government should keep its hands to itself and stop interfering within provincial affairs. Who did they send on CBC to talk about this? The now Minister of Housing, Sean Fraser.
Let's take a look.
Provincial leaders wrapped up their annual meeting today with a message to the federal government to stay out of their affairs. No one expressed that more bluntly than Ontario Premier Doug Ford.
Like, something's broken. They're wasting taxpayers' money, go through the provinces, and you know what happens? The premiers get pissed. Simple as that. And they jump in there and they think they know better.
Before we let CBC continue, I found it very interesting as to when they cut that clip. So we're going to show you the question that was asked of the premiers that led to that answer, and then you'll get the full context of that clip. And this just goes to align with what we've been telling you about the CBC and how they make things look very different depending on what they show you versus what actually happened.
Hi, I'm Nathan Horn with allnovascotia.com. My question I've directed to to Premier Houston. You guys recently had a letter to the federal government sort of outlining how you wanted them to kind of stay out of certain areas such as education, housing, and healthcare, unilateral decisions rather, not being made. I'm just wondering, how do you reconcile that when, considering like how, for instance, the Halifax municipality has said that the province isn't doing enough? How does that work?
So you're asking a question. So we want the federal government to restrict its kind of meddling, I guess, to federal government issues and leave provincial jurisdiction issues to the provinces. That's what we want. And we want them to be our partner and support us. Are you asking a question that municipalities aren't saying the provinces aren't doing enough?
Well, yeah, like basically, how do you respond to that? What they're saying, like they're suggesting that you're not doing enough, but the federal government, maybe they could come in and kind of work together with you. Does that contradict the, sort of not making unilateral decisions comment from the letter? That's all.
No, not at all. I guess what I would say, just as a general point, and every premier here would have similar experiences, but it's very unlikely that the federal government could partner with a municipality on any project that wouldn't ultimately involve the province paying some portion of it or having some involvement. So trying to do an end around on certain things, and housing is an obvious example, where the federal government goes direct to a municipality to try and cut some deal on something. It's just not productive in the grand scheme of things. And we just ask them to respect our jurisdiction, work with us, and we'll pull in other partners, which are municipalities are valued partners for sure. We can all work together. Just trying to exclude one of those parties from the table doesn't make sense, and we just want them to focus on their issues, and we'll focus on ours, and we'll get along just fine.
So this is a really important point, and it's an important point that I think people need to understand that all of the premiers agree on. And either the federal government doesn't care, they don't understand, or both. Is that when the federal government decides, hey, we're going to do a dental plan, everybody, and we're going to just spend all this money, we're not going to consult with the provinces, we're just going to consult with the people that tell us it's a great idea, then we can go to the media and say we've had experts tell us it's a great idea, and then we can start rolling it out. Well, here's the problem with that, is that the people in the provinces, you, me, Tanya, everybody across Canada, you pay on your taxes, we see it every year, you pay provincial income tax, and then you pay federal income tax. You also pay municipal taxes, property taxes, taxes everywhere. So the provinces, some of them have dental plans.
All of them do have some sort of pharmacare plan in place currently.
Right.
And that's before the NDP opened their mouths.
So what does that mean? It means that when the federal government comes in and says we're going to have a national pharmacare plan, the problem is there's costs to running a pharmacare plan, right? So in the provinces, for whatever plan that they have a way to pay, for people to actually, get paid for the pharmacare plan, and there's a way to either reimburse or that you don't have to do anything and the province takes care of it. In Ontario, that's handled through OHIP. So,
well, actually, in Ontario, it's handled through OHIP if you're 25 years old or younger. If you're between 25 and up, I suppose, you fall under the Trillium Drug Benefit Program, which is a program you have to apply for. But once you apply for it, you pay a deductible every year. And then everything above and beyond that deductible is covered by the Trillium Drug Benefit. Now, I don't want to say everything because there are a lot of medications that aren't covered, and it's usually things that are considered like nice to haves instead of must haves. So your antibiotics are probably going to be covered, whereas something like Viagra, sorry, it's not covered. But that's how the Trillium Drug Benefit works here in Ontario.
But the point is that there are people and systems and resources that you pay taxes to the government that actually funds that. Now, if the federal government comes in and then says, hey, we have a pharmacare plan too, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be paying essentially double because the pharmacare has their way to administrate the plan, and then the province already has their way to administrate their plan. And you are paying double duty on top of it.
Well, and Premier Smith from Alberta had said, we already have a pharmacare plan in place, and ours covers like over 5,000 different types of medications. This federal plan, pharmacare plan, it only covers 2 contraceptives and diabetes medication. So if you're on, say, beta blockers for a high blood pressure, guess what? That national plan's not going to pick up the tab. So what happens? Is the province expected to drop its plan? Do you keep the provincial plan and you also get the federal plan? And this is the problem. The federal government did not speak to the premiers and didn't work this stuff out.
And nobody knows the answers. The federal government doesn't know the answers, and the premiers don't know the answers. And all the government really says is, well, we'll figure that out. No, you don't build an airplane as it's flying. That's kind of the rule. So this is what all of the premiers are saying. And they're not saying, the federal government can go take a hike, keep your money. What they're saying is, if you want to do something at the provincial level, then
talk to us.
Engage with the premiers. Gee, like the premiers, let me think. Were they not just asking, demanding, any other word to try and get Trudeau to actually sit down with the premiers for a premier meeting? And Trudeau was saying, no, we don't need to do that. Yeah, it was centered on the carbon tax, but there would have been other issues that would have been brought up as well.
Well, and the fact he hasn't sat down with the premiers since I think it was 2016.
Yeah, almost 10 years.
That's a long time.
Great leadership, Justin Trudeau.
I mean, all levels of government need to work together. And it seems like what's happening right now is the federal government thinks they're the big kid on the playground and can bully the other kids, meaning the premiers, into doing whatever they want.
Well, and they can't, because as we've said before, they're not bigger or better. It's just they're different systems.
Can I just add, the second part of that is things like the school food lunch program, for example. It's a wonderful mom and pop type issue for the federal government to want to have a role in, but jurisdictions such as Prince Edward Island and others have had pay what you can K-12 school lunch program since 2021. So I would certainly welcome and continue to make the offer to the federal government to come in and partner with us. So maybe we can expand it, maybe we can improve the offerings, maybe we can buy much more local if we have to pay a little more for it. We've extended our school lunch program into the summer for those families who struggle on a daily basis, that we provide some. And that's just one example of what we talk about, this jurisdictional creep, so to speak. We all at this table, and I think every Canadian would expect that all of their levels of government should try to pitch in and do everything they can to make their lives a little bit easier. But it gets just a little bit frustrating with the duplication and the overstepping, so to speak, of the federal government. The dental care program is another example where if they could just partner with a jurisdiction such as ours, who has done a very good job with the provincial dental care program, that we could probably exceed the goals of which the federal government has set. So when we talk about, when Premier Houston talks about the jurisdictional creep, this is what we're talking about. We're not asking the federal government to butt out. We're asking them to say, let's get to the table together. Let's understand from your jurisdiction the same way Tim or I would do that with our municipalities, to say, what do you need? How can we work together to achieve it? And at the end, keep people at the focus of this, and how can we best deliver the best results for Islanders and Canadians.
Yeah, I want to jump on this breakfast program. I think it's a great program, but here's an example. When the federal government, they spend $1 billion over 5 years feeding 400 kids. Our program in Ontario delivers almost 90 million meals and snacks to more than 600,000 school-age children, and our annual funding is 38 million. Like, something's broken.
Okay, there's the part that was missing.
That's a huge difference.
It's a massive difference.
It was what, 400 million compared to about 38 million?
So
did I get those numbers right?
So the federal government commits, he's using it as an example, $1 billion over 5 years. So that's $200 million a year, right?
Okay.
So that is intended to feed 400,000 kids.
Okay.
The Ontario government's plan feeds 600,000 kids for 38 million a year.
So it feeds more kids for a fraction of the price.
Correct.
What are they doing in Ottawa?
And that's where he then said something is broken, but the CBC didn't want to trash the school lunch program, so they left the actual facts out. This is the CBC, folks.
Well, and this is what I mean when we say we go to the source, which in this case is CPAC, and we will report on what we see on the source, CPAC, sometimes Parleview, and then we'll go and watch something on CBC, and we're asking ourselves, did they watch the exact same thing that we did? Because they just represent it in a completely different way.
Well, I would say they absolutely did watch the same thing that we did, which is why they cut it out, because they get 69.999% of their funding from the federal government, folks. So anyway, let's go back to Ford for him to finish.
They're wasting taxpayers' money, go through the provinces, and you know what happens? The premiers get pissed. Simple as that. And they jump in there, and they think they know better than what we know, and we deal with it on a daily basis. So throwing that sort of money around and just tossing checks around without any accountability, there's a perfect example how we can feed more children than what they can do there.
That's insane. You know, I don't like Ford very much. I think we particularly are quite upset at what he's done to the autism program in Ontario and left children like our son.
Well, to be completely fair, we're pissed at what the Liberals and the Conservatives have done to the autism program in Ontario.
Right, yeah. The Liberals started it, but the Conservatives just kind of drove that nail in the coffin. Point being, it's nice to actually hear him stand up for Ontarians.
Yeah, it is, and it's nice that he actually agrees with the majority of Canadians when agrees with the perspectives of all the federal government knows how to do is throw money around, and they're not spending it responsibly
or respectfully. I mean, the federal government forgets that it is taking the money from you, and that's what it's doing. You're not giving it over willingly. You have to give it to them. It's in law. If you don't, the CRA is going to be after you. So they literally are taking this money from you and saying, we'll spend it on your behalf on these social programs, on medical programs, et cetera, and the federal Liberals just seem to be throwing cash at anything and everything. They forget that this is your hard-earned money.
Anyway, let's continue with the CBC just for a teeny bit.
Despite that, the premiers did weigh in on federal responsibilities. They say Ottawa must meet the NATO defense spending target as soon as possible. Sean Fraser is the Federal Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities, and he joins me now. Minister, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
You have some angry and frustrated premiers not too far away from where you are. In Halifax, they criticize the federal government's encroachment in their jurisdictions without adequate consultation or collaboration. How are you going to respond to that?
Look, I spend a lot of my time when I'm home in this constituency and visiting communities across Canada, talking with ordinary people. And never once have I been asked to pick fights with another level of government or with a different political party. People don't want politicians to pick fights with one another. They want us to work together to solve problems. I never knew that it was controversial when we invest tens of billions of new spending in healthcare to insist that it goes to things like family doctors and mental health. I never understood the objection to investing in housing during a housing crisis to make sure that we're supporting cities who are actually making it easier to build homes. And when it comes to education, again, a provincial responsibility technically, I can't wrap my head around the objection to making sure that kids go to school on a full stomach. We don't want to pick fights. We want to be at the table to help solve problems. My hope is the premiers see a willing partner, despite their recent interventions at the Council of the Federation, indicating that they seemingly don't want us to be a part of these conversations.
How arrogant was that response?
And the spin, right?
That was just shameful.
Yeah, well, it's shameful Shawnee Fraser, right? So the guy who lost 1 million people, while he was immigration minister.
But seriously, it's like, how arrogant. Well, I never thought, spending $10 million on healthcare would be a bad thing, et cetera, et cetera. It's not a bad thing, but the bad thing is that you did not communicate properly to the premiers. That's the bad thing, is that you came in like, Uncle Moneybags and be like, here's money. We're going to spend it on dental. We're going to spend it on pharmacare. We're going to just throw money around without talking to the provinces and seeing what they actually need.
Yeah, and he's taking this attitude that, well, we're just trying to do something nice. And they're implying that the provinces have zero programs, right? When he says, well, we're just trying to, I didn't think it was a bad thing that, we want kids to go to school on a full stomach. Well, number one, you're taxing us to hell and back. Number two, carbon tax on groceries and everything else. Number three, inflation caused in a big part because of you. Number four, you didn't sit down with the provinces when you were putting this together. You rushed it through to try to meet some crappy deliverable so you can say to Canadians, we have a school lunch program. So it's like this. You have a neighbor and you think it's a good idea to put up a fence. So what you do is you go out and hire the most expensive contractor, and they're sitting there and they're building the fence, and your neighbor comes out and says, what the hell is this? Well, we're building a fence. What do you mean we are building a fence? You're building a fence. Oh, well, yeah, you're going to pay for it too. You didn't ask me about building this fence. Well, yeah, but it's our fence, so you're going to pay for it too. Screw you, I'm not going to pay for that fence. What's wrong with you? And it's not even the fence that I want. Sound familiar? This is exactly what the federal government does when they try to put money and programs in that are under the traditional provincial jurisdiction without talking to them.
Now, I wasn't born yet when Tommy Douglas came in and created national Medicare for everybody. But I imagine that there was a lot of back and forth with the provinces, that they didn't just swoop in and go, oh, you are being given X amount of money and now you have a national medical program, like, or I should say provincial medical program. But point being, I imagine that there was a lot of collaboration that went on. And you know what? You might have had some people, some premiers that didn't want anything to do with it, but eventually collaboration is what won the day.
Yeah. And the important part is we could afford it.
A lot of premiers brought up school lunch, and I don't think they are ideologically opposed to feeding needy students. But they made the point that it's the process under which it was done, that it was kind of sprung on them in a budget with no real concentration on how to build the plan. And even on things that you're doing like pharmacare and dental care, they're worried about what happens in 5 years if you or a future federal government decides they're not going to fund these things, and they're left with all of this infrastructure in place and without the money to support it.
And look, I agree with you. I don't mean to suggest that provinces don't believe that kids should have a full stomach.
You literally just made that suggestion. That's literally what I didn't mean to imply. Yes, you did. Yes, you did, Sean.
Like I said, it's just arrogance. Maybe he didn't mean to, but that's absolutely how it came across.
Oh no, he absolutely did mean to. Come on, he absolutely meant to imply that the provinces don't care about that, because he's the one saying, "Well, I'm talking to Canadians, and you know." They're the ones that seem to care about this, and you're implying that the provinces don't. So don't even.
I don't know, man. These liberals are like so inept. I wouldn't be surprised if he thought that was an appropriate way to address the situation, not realizing like exactly what he said and how he said it.
Well, apparently he thinks it's appropriate to lose 1 million people. So.
Well, that's my point.
In my home province, I want to applaud the provincial government's efforts to actually advance work in this particular space. But this is something that should not come as a surprise. This is something that we campaigned on. It's something that was the subject of a lot of public conversation, and it's something that we've decided to take action on. When we're putting money on the table, if provinces don't want to be a part of that initiative, they're free to tell us that that's not something that they want our help with. However, the money is there, and my advice to them is that they should work with us to develop this program. We're going to have to work together, particularly if it's delivered in the school system.
The hubris. The money is there, like take it or leave it.
Well, it's like the money is there, so it's up to them to work with that. Yeah, dude.
And we campaigned on this. They should have seen it coming.
Right?
Like, are you serious, guy?
You also campaigned on election reform. What happened to that? Just saying. But, yeah, no, that's... Gee, I wonder why they're pissed at you. Maybe it's because you're just like, well, you know, we're just going to put up this program. And, you know, it's that clip from The Simpsons where Bart is like, you know, moving his fist like this. And he's like, well, if I walk into you and you get hit, it's not my fault. You know, they're like, if I set up this program and you don't come and talk to me, it's not my fault. Yeah, it is. If you're setting up the program, it's on you to go out and engage people. It's on you to sell the provinces that this is a good idea.
Well, you know what it would be like if you work in a corporate setting and you're middle management? It would be like the upper boss just coming directly to your workers and being like, you're working on this project now. And you're sitting there going like, well, wait, we were working on this project over here. And boss is like, no, we're working on this project now. Completely skipping middle management and going straight to the guys on the ground level.
Well, like that happens a lot, actually.
You're not supposed to do it though, and it pissed you off, didn't it?
Yeah, it ticks off the managers and the people responsible for the departments when all of a sudden they find out their team is doing something that they didn't even ask them to do. So. Right.
I mean, you need everybody involved. You need the guys on the ground floor because they're the ones doing the work, but you also need the middle managers because they're the ones that are kind of overseeing the direction of the department.
Bottom line, to cut through all the BS, this is what happened. And I'm 100% certain of this. So the Liberals and the NDP realized that they had delivered basically nothing for Canadians in the last 4 years. When they reflected back on it, oh crap, we actually haven't done anything. So what we need to do is we need to just get this stuff out the door, and we'll figure it out. And then we can at least say we've delivered on it. Remember when the dental program was voted on in the House of Commons? The NDP spent dozens of dollars on their ad campaign that consisted of a couple of images on Twitter and their website. So, and they were saying, oh, we've just launched the NDP dental plan, even though nothing was launched. Why? Because they still hadn't gotten the dentist to sign up to it. And there's still 70% of dentists that still have not signed up to this. Yet they're touting it like, well, we've launched the dental plan. No, you haven't.
Well, it's like how they've launched their pharmacare program with 2 classes of pharmaceuticals.
And no one has received a single drug. Just saying. And they're not going to. Not for at least over a year.
Well, and again, the provincial programs are already in place. I'll make sure I leave a link in the description to the website where you can find your province's pharmacare program, and you can sign up if you need to. Check it out. I'll leave a link in the description.
Anyway, we're not going to subject you to Sean Fraser anymore.
Thank goodness.
This is the hubris. It's a good word that is the Liberal government, and they think that all roads lead to them, and all they have to do is say, we're going to pass this law and pass this act, and it's on the governments of the provinces. They're supposed to, come up to us, bow in deference, and ask for money. Well, the premiers have met, and I think they have unanimously spoken that that's not how it works.